Right around the corner, about 6 weeks exactly from CU's first game at Hawaii to start the 2015 college football season. We're going to talk college football, and joining us right now, we have Peter Burns from ESPN's SEC Network. He's a studio anchor, former Colorado resident. Peter, how you doing today?
I'm kind of jealous. I want everybody to go on that trip. I mean, the Buffs opening up in Hawaii. That's like the ultimate road trip, guys. You guys need to take the show on the road out there.
Well, and it's a late-night game for us. It starts at 11 p.m. Mountain Time, so I believe 10 out or 11 out your time in Charlotte.
Oh, it's going to be way too late. I'm an old man now, so I'm like in bed before even the nightly news starts. It's hell getting old. I guarantee you that.
Well, first question first, and most important, I want to know, I'm looking at your Twitter bio right now. It says you like Crown Royal. I want to know what you like your Crown Royal with or how you like it. Is it on the rocks? Are you just drinking it straight up? Are you drinking Crown and 7? What are you drinking, Peter?
It kind of just depends on the night. I think if it's a kind of a cool, chill-out night, I'll drink like the Crown Special Reserve, and I'll have it on the rocks. Like, that's the proper way to do it. But if it's hey, we're going hard all night long and we're getting after it, then I'll probably mix it with a little 7. So I'll have kind of just Crown and 7s, normally the go-to. So as long as it's Crown Royal, we're in pretty good shape.
I like it. Well, speaking of drunk, let's talk about SEC Media Days. The other week, a lot of crazy stuff going on. There's a lot of change in the SEC. New quarterbacks abound. But first, let's get to the coaches. A lot of crazy comments made out of there. A lot of controversial, blown-up comments in the media. First, you had Nick Saban talking about Alabama's supposed chemistry issues and the players looking at their NFL draft grades before the Sugar Bowl loss to Ohio State. You have Brett Bielema talking about the kneel down versus Texas in their bowl game being borderline erotic. And you've had Gus Malzahn and Steve Spurrier in the last few days. Gus Malzahn talking about how playing in the SEC has tired these teams out and the possibility of expanding to 8 teams. And then Steve Spurrier kind of making his last stand yesterday. What was your take on everything these coaches said?
No, I mean, the biggest takeaway I have from all of it is that they're just ready to play football. I mean, we're kind of in that dead zone right now where there's no NBA finals going on anymore. Baseball, the Rockies are traditionally out of it by this time. So it's like everyone is looking for anything, to write about and to talk about because we are in those dog days of summer before training camp and fall practices start. So, I think it goes to show you if it's making news, if these SEC coaches are making news, that just goes to show you that I still think the SEC reigns supreme when you're talking college football because, had it been anybody other than maybe Urban Meyer or Jim Harbaugh, and other than that, I don't know of anybody who's really making waves with anything they say right now. I mean, the SEC has gotten to the point, guys, where they were so dominant for so long that people kind of look to them as being the thought leaders of college football. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. All I know is that the media definitely wants to get behind anything an SEC coach says, and traditionally it's tear it down, and that's the mark of somebody who's had success, and the conference has had a lot of success lately.
ESPN SEC Network studio anchor Peter Burns joining us right now. Let's keep talking about the SEC, dive into the on-field product, especially in the SEC West. Quarterback situations. You have Alabama breaking in a new quarterback. LSU's whatever situation they have at quarterback right now. Ole Miss. You have even Texas A&M with an established starter in Kyle Allen. They signed 5-star Kyler Murray out of Texas. He might be challenging to get some reps this year. But let's start with Alabama. They lose Blake Sims. Right now they have Jacob Coker, the FSU transfer that a lot of people thought was going to start last year. And then you have 2 youngsters in David Cornwell and then the California Blake Barnett. What do you make of the Alabama quarterback situation? And do you think that Nick Saban sticks with the more experienced Coker?
Well, I mean, it's almost as if they stick with Coker, they almost take a step back because they were hoping that this kid was going to be able to learn it last year and he couldn't beat out a running back. I mean, Blake Sims, took that job and he did a fantastic job. Him and Lane Kiffin did a great job working together. I mean, that's the big concern going in for Alabama this year. And it's not a huge, it's not the end-all, be-all because they've had, A.J. McCarron in his first year won the national championship for Alabama. So they can coach that way. It's not that big of a deal, but there's not one person that Saban feels safe with. if that makes any sense. I mean, with Saban, what they want is they want ball control offense. They want a person who's not going to make mistakes. And at this point in the quarterback race, none of the 5 guys that they're going to trot out there makes Nick Saban sleep well at night knowing what the quarterback position is going to be.
Well, and sticking with quarterback play, LSU, Alabama's one of Alabama's main rivals. It looks like it's between Anthony Jennings, if his legal issues get resolved, and then Brandon Harris, the highly touted sophomore who got some time last year. This seems to be the recurring theme for LSU football. And right now, you look at guys they have on that offense in wide receivers, Traven Durrell and Malachi Dupree, 2 very highly touted guys who put up numbers when they got the chance last season. And then, of course, Leonard Fournette at running back. And then you have everybody on that defense, even with defensive coordinator John Chavis leaving. I want to ask you, for Cam Cameron, the offensive coordinator, and for Les Miles, at what point are they getting to the end of their rope with not only fans but for alumni and boosters? Because, to be honest, LSU, they produce more talent in that state than almost anybody else. And it seems like year after year, even though they lose guys to the league, they just keep replenishing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, LSU people understand that. I mean, the smart Tiger fans know that, you know, hey, one of the issues that LSU continues to have year in and year out is that they have so much talent that the talent rises to the top, and all of a sudden they go to the NFL. I mean, it's a leadership loss that they have year in and year out because, you know, every year you're starting to play freshman and sophomore because the juniors and seniors have, you know, basically already left. So that's a tough situation, but it's still a good problem to have. I mean, the quarterback situation is a mess down in Baton Rouge right now. They're hoping Brandon Harris takes the job. It was his last year had he worked hard enough, but I don't think that LSU coaches saw enough out of him that they really wanted him to mature, and I don't think he was ready for it that freshman year. So Tiger fans are hoping it's Brandon Harris because his ceiling, guys, is a lot higher than it is for Anthony Jennings, who traditionally shows up and does all the work, works really hard, but then he got in some trouble in the offseason. So, I mean, listen, it's LSU, it's Alabama, it's Georgia. Some of the perennial powerhouses in the SEC right now all have quarterback issues, and that's why the SEC is as open as it's ever been.
Well, let's talk about the wild cards right now, and I think the 3 main ones, I'm going to exclude Mississippi State. They bring back Dak Prescott, which ironically, that's probably the most settled quarterback position, but they lose everybody else. And the 3 I want to talk about, you have Ole Miss, who brings in Chad Kelly, the former Clemson quarterback, had a massive season in JUCO. They have everybody back. Laquan Treadwell will be healthy. They have a lot coming back on that defense. How legitimate of a threat are they in the West?
You know what? The crazy part about the West right now is you can throw in all 6 of the schools, just like you said, excluding Mississippi State, and put them in a hat and pick the order, and you might be right. I mean, the talent level is of NFL level on all 6 of those other schools in the SEC West. They're going to be there. I mean, scouts are probably booking their flights to see Ole Miss play more than any other team in the SEC because the amount of NFL quality guys that they have. Laramie Tunsil, Laquan Treadwell, several players on the defensive side as well too. So I think Ole Miss has a shot, but they don't strike me as a team that's going to do anything special. I just think that they just run into the buzzsaw that is SEC West scheduling.
Yeah, and we talked about the defense that Ole Miss has. 2 teams that, especially in Auburn, a very popular pick to not only win the SEC West, but to maybe reach the playoff. And then Texas A&M, they bring in 2 new defensive coordinators. Will Muschamp comes into Auburn from after getting fired from Florida, and then you have John Chavis leaving LSU in a nasty type of divorce and going to Texas A&M. First of all, how great do you think Auburn's chances are of winning the SEC if they finally get some consistent defense and making the playoffs? And secondly, does A&M have their answer in John Chavis?
Well, let's start with the first question with Auburn. I mean, I think that the Auburn defense is already 10 points a game better with Will Muschamp leading them. I think he'll simplify some of the stuff they're trying to do on defense. They have the athletes. They just need the scheme out there, and now they've got the guy to run it. So I'm picking Auburn to win the SEC, all of the SEC, not only just the West, but at the SEC championship as well. I think that they can put up the numbers, and defensively they got a little bit better. On the other side, I think the dark horse candidate, if Auburn doesn't win it, I'm picking Texas A&M. I think Kyle Allen, that second-year starter, is going to be solid. He's going to have a kid named Kyler Murray, who's a stud as well, who's going to be pushing him. But I don't think he'll be able to take Kyle Allen's job this first year. But Chavis going into A&M just changes everything for that defense. Because, again, they're just like Auburn. They have all the athletes that are funneling to Kevin Sumlin's school down in College Station. They just don't know what to do with them. And John Chavis has showed that he has an amazing way of coaching these guys on defense. I think the game of the year this year is going to be Alabama headed to Texas A&M in Kyle Field. I think that will be a showdown for the ages, and I think Texas A&M beats Alabama in Kyle Field in College Station middle of the season.
Well, let's talk about Texas A&M. Their team, like you said, with John Chavis, they have that talent on defense, especially with Myles Garrett, the monster sophomore defensive end. But that offense, after all the numbers they've put up in their first couple, 2-3 years in the SEC, you have Kyle Allen there. You have Kyler Murray backing him up. And then maybe the best set of wide receivers in the country, you have Josh Reynolds, Ricky Seals-Jones, and then the very highly touted Christian Kirk out of Arizona, who's going to play that slot role. And then that's not even mentioning Speedy Noyle. Do you think this is the best offense we're going to see out of Kevin Sumlin's Texas A&M team?
I think so, and you've got Jake Spavital, of course, calling the plays. Jake is right there with Lane Kiffin as far as brilliant offensive minds that know, hey, these are the kids that we have. This is the play calling we're going to put out there. The big question is with both of those teams, Auburn and A&M, they remind me very similar of each other. The fact that there's not a question, can they put up 30 points a game? The answer is yes. They're going to find a way to do it. The bigger question is, when times get tough, can they hold an opponent to less than 24 points a game? That bit Malzahn and Auburn, and it's bit Kevin Sumlin ever since he arrived. I mean, even at Houston, he had some issues with defense. So that's why they're hoping Chavis does that as well, which is unique just to the SEC in general, simply because the SEC was always known as hey, it's going to be 14-10. It's going to be a 9-6 game, just bloody battle of scrimmage. And now it's become these athletes are spreading out a little bit more, and there's a lot of points scored. And I know a lot of SEC fans don't like that because they don't feel like that's the way. They feel like that's Pac-12 football. That's gimmicky football, and that's not the way it should be played. But that's also winning championships right now.
ESPN SEC Network anchor Peter Burns joining us right now, predicting Auburn to win the SEC West and ultimately win the SEC. Let's talk about, in the East, who they're going to face up with. Missouri, back-to-back champions of the SEC East. Every year it seems like it's Georgia's time, and they have a great season, but they fall just short of either winning the SEC championship or, in the last 2 years, making it to the SEC championship. Even with losing their quarterback and playing Alabama and, I believe, at Auburn, and playing at Tennessee, do you think Georgia has to be the favorite in the SEC East?
Yeah, and I think Georgia ends up being the favorite in the SEC simply because no one else is quite ready to take the crown away from them. I mean, if you go back and look at Missouri the last 2 years, that's a completely different Missouri squad. I mean, the Missouri squad 2 years ago was unbelievable. Last year's was okay, but Georgia just choked it down the stretch. But Missouri, I think, falls off a little bit. They lose the Brantley kid who had a bad car accident, unfortunately, so he's not going to be able to be available. And they've lost some other parts of that defense, which I think they'll struggle a little bit. But I mean, the one wild card in the SEC East right now is the Tennessee Volunteers. As much talent as anybody in the first 20 players. I mean, they can go head to head with guys like Alabama, with Ohio State. They can go whatever they want. And they got a kid named Josh Dobbs who's literally a rocket scientist. I mean, that's what this kid's major is. He's so smart. They're going to be fun to watch. My only issue with Tennessee is that they're a very young team and they don't have a lot of depth. So, I mean, I think my 1-2 punch in the East this year is going to end up being Georgia and Tennessee. I think those are the top two teams coming out of that side of the division.
Well, let's get into Tennessee. Like you said, they are the trendy pick right now in the SEC East. You brought up Josh Dobbs, the extremely smart quarterback, you have the highly touted sophomore Jalen Hurd. You have the bevy of wide receivers, including Josh Malone. And then on the defensive side, stud sophomore Derek Barnett had 20-plus tackles for loss last year. You pair him with Kurt Magott and Jalen Reeves-Maben at the linebacker spots. How much is that September 12th game against Oklahoma going to tell us if Tennessee's a legit contender or not?
Everything. I mean, that's one of those games, and you have a couple of them probably every 3 or 4 years that you can circle, not just in the SEC, but all of college football, and go, this is a program-defining game. Because there's so much hype in Knoxville right now, and Butch Jones has built that, and rightfully so. He's worked hard. I mean, I can remember he almost took the Colorado job, which would have been unbelievable for CU had Butch Jones gone there. But I think that for them, if they lose that game, all of that momentum, not all of it, but a majority of that momentum just dies out with it. But if they win that game, and my goodness, if they go out and win that game 31-14, by 2 or 3 scores, game on, because they're going to have, they got a tough schedule this year, but they will have all the confidence in the world, and that is only going to increase the steamrolling effect that Butch Jones has had with recruiting.
Yeah, you mentioned the tough schedule between September 26th and October 24th. In 5 weeks, Tennessee plays at Florida, Arkansas at home, Georgia at home, a bye week, and then at Alabama. So a lot to ask for a very young team. But if this isn't the year for Tennessee, it certainly looks like next year might be the year. My last question about the SEC East. It looks like the University of Florida is in a little bit of a flux right now. They've lost some defensive players. They've lost some talent. They bring back Vernon Hargraves in that very talented secondary. But on offense, it looks like they're in a little bit of a jumble. Head coach Jim McElwain, we've seen locally what he's been able to do at Colorado State. But like I said, they're in flux. What do you think a successful season is for the Florida Gators? Is it 6-6? Is it 7-5?
If they can win 6 games, they should be dancing in the streets in Gainesville. And that stinks because Florida has been there. I mean, they were one of the powerhouses. But, I mean, McElwain is inheriting a team that really has nothing. I mean, offensively, they were horrific last year. And, defensively, at least he has Hargraves. But outside of that, there's just not enough playmakers and not enough depth, especially at the offensive line position. And even the quarterback position. So McElwain is going to be part of a complete rebuild. I think his first year he's 5-7, but if they're bowl eligible, I think you declare that a win. And I think a lot of Gator fans know, hey, we're going to have some patience here. This is not a 1-year deal. It might be 3 years. It took McElwain 3 years up at Fort Collins to turn that around. He went 4-8, then 8-4, then 10-2. I think that he can do that just as quickly out with Florida, but I think this year it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, certainly has the pedigree, not only, like you said, coaching at Colorado State, but also serving under Nick Saban for a few years. Let's move to more of a general topic. The big thing last year seemed to be pace of play during media days with a few SEC coaches, including Brett Bielema, talking about player safety. That kind of died down. This year it's satellite camps, whether it's Ohio State partnering up with Florida Atlantic or Jim Harbaugh going on his big tour. It's been a major point of contention, especially with coaches in the SEC. What have you made of this whole debate about satellite camps?
Well, I mean, I thought it was interesting because Gus Malzahn told us over at SEC Network, and he said the same thing on media days. He goes, listen, if a coach from up north, if Ohio State or Michigan comes down and tries to grab a kid out of Alabama, chances are it's pretty slim and none that they're gonna get a kid from Alabama. It's just not happening. They're either going to go to Auburn or Alabama or another SEC school. And there's a lot of factors in that. What coaches don't like about that is they know that they're in the most fertile recruiting area in all of college football. When you look at the amount of athletes that come from the Southeast, they know that they have put a fence around it and say, we want these kids to continue to play in the SEC, and that's why the SEC continues to have the most players drafted each and every year, just incredible athletes. So I understand where the coaches come from, but at the end of the day, it is recruiting. I mean, I don't think it would bother me per se, of these recruiting camps. I mean, at the end of the day, you're recruiting kids no matter what, whether or not, if the coaches come in or not. The problem is the coaches look at it and go, well, that doesn't do me any good, because why the hell do I want to go up to Michigan to go ahead and recruit? Why do I want to go up to Idaho to recruit? I mean, it's not fair that those guys will come in our backyard where all the recruits are, as opposed to we don't even want to go over there because their states, because they aren't any recruits. So it's intriguing. And then again, like I said, at the end of the day, the best team traditionally wins out when it comes to recruiting, and there's enough recruits to go around.
Yeah, and like you said about teams from the South going up north, Dan Mullen referenced, he had some comments about Jim Harbaugh and how Harbaugh should focus on making the high school players in Michigan, better football players. Couple more questions for you. ESPN SEC Network anchor Peter Burns joining us right now to talk college football as we get closer to the season. I got to ask you, if you have a Final Four, an early one right now, who are you picking for 2016? I
mean, I like Baylor coming out of the Big 12. I mean, when you go out there, I think that they're stacked once again. And you go ahead and look at their schedule. Their schedule is absolutely ridiculously easy. I mean, it's a joke. So I think I like Baylor. If they can get past TCU, I like for them to be in. And again, I like Ohio State. Once again, they're going to have a tough game against Michigan, and that's it. I mean, that's the big deal about all these other conferences versus the SEC is you go ahead and look at these schedules, and they got to get past one game. As opposed to, like we were just talking about Tennessee's schedule, where you got 4 or 5 legit, trophy candidates to get by. So I don't know who comes out of the Pac-12. I mean, that's kind of my big question mark right now is who that team is. Is it USC? Is it UCLA? Is it Oregon that comes out? I think there will be a Pac-12 team. I haven't studied it enough to know which one of those teams come out. But I like Baylor, I like Ohio State, I like a Pac-12 team, and I like the Auburn Tigers. I think that they just fit the right mold of a team that should be peaking if they get good quarterback play. So that's my cop-out. I give you 3 of the 4 that I think make it.
I like it, but getting back to Baylor, you don't think at SMU, Lamar at home and Rice at home is a tough slate?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I don't think that they leave. If they leave like the state of Texas, I think once, or no, I think they do it twice, and I think it's Iowa State, and Kansas. Not exactly football powerhouses, so they've got it. They've got it on a silver platter. All I know is they wish they had Bryce Petty still for one more year, because then it would be a virtual lock that they'd make the college football playoff.
Yeah, and what do you think about TCU? A lot of people are really high on them. They benefited from a lot of turnovers last year, and it seems like they're kind of getting that West Virginia Orange Bowl bump from a few years ago and the Oklahoma Sugar Bowl bump from last year with what they did to Ole Miss in the bowl, beating them 42-3. Do you think that's a team that's going to contend, or is that a team that's going to go 8-4, 9-3, still have a very good season, but not be at the top with everything they're losing on that defense?
To me, TCU and Baylor are the same team coming into this up year. They're both 11-1 teams, and one of those losses, one way or another, is going to come to each other. I think those are the two teams. And it's crazy. We don't talk about Oklahoma. We don't talk about Texas. Those are traditionally the powerhouses. But what you've seen what Bryles have done is you've seen what Patterson and none of those guys have done. It's just impressive at both of those teams on the I-35 corridor. So, I mean, I think, to me, you can flip a coin. The only reason why I took Baylor is that I think they have just a slightly easier schedule than TCU, who TCU still has a pretty easy schedule, in my opinion, as well.
All right, ESPN's SEC Network studio anchor Peter Burns joining us. Last question for you here, Peter. With the SEC Network, I'm assuming you're in Charlotte or in the North Carolina area, correct?
That's correct. Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's raining right now, which is very rare.
Well, you know how Twitter loves their food takes, and one of the biggest debates on Twitter is about barbecue, and North Carolina has been getting the short end of the stick for having the vinegar-based barbecue sauce. I don't know how big of a barbecue connoisseur you are, but after being out there, what do you think of the barbecue?
I can't do vinegar. The pork and everything like that, the meat here is as good as anywhere it'll be in the country. The problem is I'm more of a molasses-type barbecue, Southern or Texas-style barbecue. So trust me, I don't pass up any barbecue place here in North Carolina, but when they bring by the vinegar barbecue sauce, I'm like, nah, it's good. I'll bring my own. I'll go ahead and bring my own because I just can't, man, get into the vinegar stuff. I've tried. I just can't do it.
Well, you heard it from the man himself. No vinegar. Vinegar likes the more traditional barbecue. That's Peter Burns, ESPN SEC Network studio anchor, joining us here on the K-Met Sports Show to talk a little college football. Peter, thank you for coming on.
Anytime, guys. I'll be happy to do it with the rest of the season. Y'all have a good one.
You too.